All right, I think that to be respectful to everyone's time, we'll just get going. Happy Aloha Friday! I've always wanted to say that. I haven't said that yet after arriving to Hawaii, but it does feel like this week was a pretty heavy week, even though it was a short week. And I'm personally very happy that it is Friday. I know that there's been a lot of conversations, a lot of planning. I still see a lot of people working pretty intentionally in our plans for our fall reopen. I do want to start by, again, I appreciate what everyone is doing. So I'd like to thank everyone for your efforts. Um, I'll tell you this much. This week, we've had some of our students come back to fulfill their spring course requirements. I'm appreciative of everyone that's had their hands on that because it's taken quite a bit of planning for us to ensure that everything is up to par and that our students have a good experience. We still have a lot of planning going for the fall. Like we've shared before, we have an envisioning team. I want to acknowledge everyone that's in both the envisioning teams as well as the work groups that are assessing information that we're trying to make available as quickly as possible so that we could help make informed decisions as we roll out for fall. Um, in thanking them, I want to start by just sharing that even though it seems like a lot of time has elapsed since we last spoke, it hasn't been all that long. So we've made it through quite a bit of planning and some modest decision making, but there's a lot that's still pending. Some university-wide decision making as well as statewide decision making. Um, I'm hopeful that you're all, listening to what's going on at the state level and at the county levels. It's very encouraging to see that a lot of businesses are reopening. I'm really hopeful that I could get an appointment to get a haircut. And on top of that, having beaches, I'll say that I've tried to venture a little bit so that my kids came out of the house for the first time this last weekend. So from when all of this erupted right until this last weekend, I've had them cooped up at home. And so I think that we all need a little bit of that relief and seeing some level of normal. And I think that the telltale sign is I think today the water park reopened, which is pretty interesting. And so that's hopefully a telltale sign of better days to come. I wish that we would have had this call yesterday because as of yesterday, I think we had 3 consecutive days of no new cases. And of course, now that I'm having the Zoom meeting, we had 3 cases overnight. It's still pretty modestly controlled. We are still very optimistic. Yesterday, I listened for quite a bit of time to the streamed governor and mayor's conversations, and it's enlightening to see. Hopefully, they're coordinating a little bit more, and we're seeing some more things opening with some logic. Now, last week there was an email that came out from UH System relative to a board update on legislative updates and budget concerns. And so I want to start moving in that direction because I think that that's one of the bigger impetus for today's meeting is just providing some updates. I hope that you all understand at times we have some information, but that information is not official or it may not be final. And so I really hesitate providing information when it's still a moving target. Nonetheless, I don't like to hide from things that are public or things that are rolling by way of decision making. So I want to start by saying that a lot of my information is coming from the media in the very same places that you guys could probably find it. But I've been recently looking at the state of affairs for the state of Hawaii, the budgetary situation, based on what UHERO has been communicating in terms of where the budget may be right now, as well as the recent feedback that was provided after yesterday's Council on Revenues meeting. But as a whole, I think that there is a couple of points that I want to make. Earlier during this COVID period, the governor did come out and said in a couple of instances of potential pay cuts and other strategies to balance the budget and the major hole that the state is in. Um, that since has transitioned a little bit, and while it hasn't gone away, there is a little bit of light. Yesterday, the Council of Revenues suggested that they were able to put in something in the ballpark of $1.3 billion into this rainy fund that would help address that $2.3 billion hole that we are projecting that will be in over the next 13 months. And so what that does in terms of management of the financial burdens on the state is that it creates a gap of, it ranges between $300 and $500 million that we're still probably going to be in the red for. But it's not the same $2 billion that we were originally anticipating. Again, I'm sharing this, and this is not coming from the official sources, so I'm just sharing what we all have available to us. Another major consideration is that some of the money that is being earmarked for this rainy fund is coming from CARES money that is still currently restricted, and it can't be used to supplant expenses that we would have already budgeted for at the state level. And then the other consideration, and one where I'm gonna ask Mark to pitch in a little bit, is that what the legislators have been doing, and it's something that has happened historically here in Hawaii, but the actions haven't been what the current actions look like, is that the legislators have been looking at state agency vacancies and dollar amounts that may not have been spent in potentially using some of this to equate to that rainy fund amount of dollars. And so in a recent update from UH that you all got through email, there was some consideration of some vacancies that were taken away by the ledge. And so, Mark, if you could maybe chip in at this point on some of that in more details. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Had a little technology challenged issue here. But hi, everyone. Yeah, like Carlos said, we're still in the midst of getting some hard numbers on everything. The Council of Revenues had their updated forecast yesterday that they made public. And the legislature in turn and the governor's office will be working with those numbers that the Council of Revenues produced yesterday in order to complete their budget. I think the legislature reconvenes later in or mid-June-ish to then work through the rest of the budget for this year and also for next year. Carlos mentioned let's see if I can share this. Carlos mentioned the presentation or the email that was sent out by the university system last Friday. Yeah, and it was only last Friday that this information was shared, and it seems like it's been 3 or 4 weeks ago. But during that, in that email, it was from UH News. There was a link to Vice President for Budget and Finance, Calbert Young, and his presentation to the Board of Regents on the status of the budget and that kind of thing. And so it's a short video if you want to watch it. If you're a budget or financial nerd, you probably will like it. But there was a slide at the front of Vice President Young's presentation that we're going to share with you and is what is on your screen. And so this information is based on the supplemental budget bill that is currently being worked through the legislature. And it's not final. That's an important consideration at this point, that the legislation has not been finalized. It has not been signed by the governor, but it does give you an idea of the kinds of things the legislature and the governor are thinking about, or what they think they need to do in order to balance the budget for this fiscal year, which ends on June 30th, and then for next fiscal year, which begins on July 1st. So the important point, and something that I think everybody will, migrate immediately to, is that the operating budget that that legislation that is being worked on removes 758 FTEs from UH's general fund budget. And so when you look at that, you go, holy smokes, wow, this is significant. And it is. That's a big cut. And those 758 positions are vacant positions, okay? So that represents, as the slide says, a little bit more than 11% of the total general funded positions in the budget. These positions do not count the unbudgeted positions that all university campuses have, nor does it count grant and contract funded positions. These are just vacant positions that are funded through the general fund of the state, okay? So what does that mean for us? And again, it is a draft of the budget, but that is the Senate draft of the budget, so we got to take it seriously. And so what does that mean for us locally, right? So of the 758, 232 of those FTEs are from the community college system in our 7 campuses. Of that 232 vacant positions, 35 are here at Leeward. So what does that mean for Leeward? Well, we have 349 authorized general funded positions, 349. So taking away 35 of those positions is 10% of our funded position total. So at the time the legislature was going through this exercise, we had 35 vacant general fund positions. And I listed where those general funded positions are. 16 of them are instructional faculty positions, 8 are non-instructional faculty, then 6 APTs, 4 civil service, and then there's 1 EM position. So that's how our breakout of these positions of the 758 are for our campus. Each of the other community college campuses and the 4-year schools have similar numbers. We're not, there are some campuses, smaller campuses, that have more vacant positions. So it's a bigger hit to their budget also. So keep that in mind. Usually Leeward does a very good job of managing our vacant positions for a campus of our size. But still, 10% is 10%, and that's pretty significant. The one other thing I will also mention, that while we're still in the midst of this, of finalizing the budget and understanding what exactly our reductions will be, there have been some very difficult decisions that we have already been forced to make. And I think it's important for us to make sure that you are aware of some of those hard decisions that we have been forced to already decide. At the beginning of this, I mentioned that the 758 vacant positions, or our 35 vacant positions that have been removed right now from our budget, did not include unbudgeted positions, nor did it include grant and contract positions. So we have roughly 15 unbudgeted positions for our college, not counting the grant and contract positions. And these are positions that are filled with people. And so out of those 15 positions that we had, we were informed that about half of those positions will no longer be extended for a reappointment. So that means that 6 or 7, I can't remember the number offhand, of those positions are not going to be renewed, and we're in the process of and we've already communicated that to those positions. So the budget cuts are real, and we're making some decisions as we are notified of these real impacts to our people. And so we got to keep that in mind, that this has impacted our campus. It's impacting all the campuses already. And while we hate to lose anybody, right, especially during this time, that's some of the reality that we're having to deal with at the present time. So I wanted to share that piece of information with you also, as well as Vice President Young's information that he shared with the Board of Regents last week. Okay.
Mark? Wow. We have a question for you about the EM position.
Okay.
Which one is it?
Which is removed. And again, this isn't a final decision. There's still some negotiation going on, but we have only one vacant EM position. It is the former Director of Planning, Policy, and Assessment position that has been vacant and has been targeted for removal by the legislature.
Thank you, Mark. I'm sure other questions will begin bubbling up. I do want to get through a couple of other quick updates, and then we'll open it up for more questions. But as it relates to all of these budgetary concerns and moving forward, again, the ledge has been reactive to the situation, more or less, like the university and the governor have been reactive. And we're still looking for that target. I think that we're all anxious for that target of when we can go back to some level of norm and realize what the actual what the extent of the budgetary challenges will be. One of the things that I left for after Mark's comments are that the ledge has put some money aside for on the rainy fund so that we could cover some of the holes that that have been created over COVID. But another consideration, which you all are probably familiar with, is that the ledge has also given the opportunity to the governor to request for a loan from the federal government to help address some of the other gaps in the budget. And so there are other opportunities up and until we have a better sense of the targeted amount of money that we're under for. We're going to be very reactive and proactive in reducing costs, not backfilling positions immediately, and being very frugal. I am still optimistic that once we have that target, we're able to do things that will allow us to carry out our mission. And so it's difficult times. We are challenged on the staffing side. The appearance is, of course, the swept positions is going to be felt in some capacity, and it will also restrict our abilities to be nimble and maybe even creative. But I'm hopeful that, again, as we begin to get a better sense of where we really are financially, we could start making some moves to help get out of the hole. I think that what I'll do now is that I'll transition a little bit to some of the work that has been happening from the work groups. And I think that
We got a couple budget questions. You want to do that before?
we could try to do some, yeah,
Okay.
if I have answers.
No, and these are mostly for Mark. Is there a process to ask for any of the budgeted positions back, and also to explain what unbudgeted positions mean?
Okay, first question, a process to try to get back. We're in the midst of negotiations, I guess you could call it, with the Community College System Office, the UH Big System Office, and our state legislators and their staff. So it is not a done deal that we'll lose 35 positions, but I think a lot of that will depend on the CARES Act funding and whether or not the state gets some relief from the federal government about what that CARES Act can be used for. Another variable in this will be the U.S. Congress's actions on another round of whether it's relief or stimulus money that will come to the states and then hopefully eventually to higher education institutions and or just K-12 institutions also. So there's a lot of variables still in play, but yes, there is this ongoing process or negotiation with our local legislative leaders and their staff about reducing the number of positions that we may have to eventually give up. With regards to the second question, what does unbudgeted mean, is that all institutions do not get funding from the or FTE from the legislature to meet all of our needs. And so as resources allow, we hire additional employees to fit those needs. And so some of our unbudgeted positions are support, the majority are support related positions. And so we could hire an additional janitor, for instance, to help with our cleaning, or an additional security officer, or an additional clerk, administrative assistant to help in an office. So we have the ability to do that. Unfortunately, these are what we term unbudgeted positions, and therefore do not have the same priorities in protections during financial crises or those other kinds of things. And so these individuals and their positions are hired under the guise of financial, that the financial means are there, and those positions have to be renewed on a year-to-year basis, okay? So that's the difference. These individuals, though, still have employment security, and so and go through probation, and just like funded positions, and so they do have employee rights, and they are covered by various collective bargaining agreements also. Okay, so I hope that answers those questions.
Cool.
Last budget question is, was the OPPA EM position considered vacant? When it was vacant, was that the position for the Dean of the Hawaiian Halau?
That is correct. That was the EM position that we had in mind for the Dean of Native Hawaiian Affairs. And it's something that's put quite a few of us to think creatively on how to address. Again, like Mark suggested, these positions are not a given, gone away positions. But like with almost any plans during these budgetary crisis periods, even the development of a unit without resources would put that unit on a very challenging situation. And so we got to go to the drawing board a little bit and see what ways we could be creative in addressing our goals in that aspect. I'm still optimistic of hearing differently on the swept positions, but that is the position. The OPA EM was the EM position that was going to be utilized as the Dean of Labor Wine Affairs. Okay. Again, we'll continue having these conversations. It's important for both transparency and for planning purposes that we all engage in these conversations. The budget is one of the crises that we're dealing with, and of course the other one is our preparations to come back to some level of operations when we come back in the fall. And so one of the areas that has been pretty instrumental in lending a hand on planning how the fall is going to look like is that of an instructional work group. And so Kay could share a little bit of what our plans are moving forward.
Be glad to. Hi, everyone. I'm grateful it's Friday. I'm grateful that our Ohana is healthy and we have survived the spring semester. I'm grateful that the faculty and staff have really pulled together to make things happen for our students. So thank you for all of you who have contributed to the success of getting through the spring semester. To all our staff and non-instructional faculty that were here servicing our students behind the scenes and even in front, handing out laptops or being on the phone doing references. Thank you so much. And we continue to get ready for fall with a lot of those same staff members. Thank you to our faculty for completing the semester in a very unusual way of going all online. You have showed that you have been very creative, thinking outside the box in order to make sure that our student learning outcomes were completed. But as we move forward to the fall, we have a little bit of time to start thinking of how and what we can do to make sure that our classes are as robust as possible. We have an instructional group that's headed up by Michael Oishi and Michael Cadre. Thank you to them for their leadership and the members of their committee that will be working with our division chairs. The system came out with different modalities and identify them so that they will be entered into Banner the same way with the same type of messaging throughout the system. Because now we have more students who take classes on multiple campuses. So our goal is not to confuse ourselves, but especially not to confuse the students. So our working group will be assisting the division chairs in helping to identify those modes of delivery that suit the course and the wishes of the instructional staff. So next week, our DCs and our program coordinators will be working with our instructional group on those modalities. And after that, they will be reaching out to the faculty. We would like to have as many classes as we can online. We don't really want any pure face-to-face because at any given time, we know that if there's another wave of COVID-19, or someone gets ill in a class, we will need to shut down and go immediately online. So every faculty member needs to have a presence on La Lima, an online presence that they can switch over seamlessly. Thank you to our EMC staff and for all the faculty that are joining in this summer to provide professional development opportunities. I would ask that anyone who has not really taught online, that they look at our fall 2020 basic DE guidelines that were approved by Faculty Senate, as well as the division chairs, so that we have this baseline set up for online teaching. And then after that, we hope you will work every semester toward achieving our leeward DE guidelines, which are more robust and what we really would like everyone eventually to get to that level. So there will be a lot of changes. So if you're faculty, please stay tuned. You'll be hearing from your division chair or program coordinator within the next few weeks. We're hoping to have everything situated by the end of June as far as our schedule and make any necessary changes. So it's a moving target. So we ask for your patience, cooperation, and let's all always focus on what's most important at Leeward. That's our students. So we want to make sure our schedules are available for our students and that we have some terrific classes for them in the fall like we always do. So if you have any questions, please reach out to any of the admin team, your instructional deans or myself, and have a few days of rest. And we look forward to having some really great classes in the fall and seeing all that creativity just rise to the top. Thanks.
Thanks, Kay. On that, there are other work groups that have also put in quite a bit of planning, and what's really nice, and I call the big group the envisioning team, mainly because I needed a group of folks that represent the college in various ways to hear the updates from every work group and see how we could coordinate a little bit better. We have a facilities work group, we have our technology work group, we have our student services type of work group. And so we're trying to come up with ways in which we are collaborating and synergizing as opposed to working in silos and making our own decisions on how the fall is going to look like. But I did want to share that a lot of work has already happened. We've already looked at different classroom configurations, we've looked at classroom capacities, we've looked at different technologies that we could use to help address the potential of another wave of COVID and how prepared we will be. The instructional modalities like Kay shared, it's just an opportunity of being clear to the students. You know, we blame distance education as a modality as the reason for why students may not be doing well. And often it's just the skewed expectations. And so being clear and upfront with the students if a class is going to be distanced with a synchronous component or not. This type of information is super critical at the time that students are enrolling and committing to classes. And so those are the things that are beginning to clear up. And so this exercise has taught us quite a bit of gaps that we have on a regular semester. And so now we're trying to patch them up and work in a more effective way. We're looking at some professional development opportunities that we'll be able to roll out over the summer so that everyone can engage in some capacity, whether there are things in instruction or maybe even some telework and how we could meet some of the student needs at distance. And so all of this work has been happening. I want to roll out, because I'm sort of hitting on some of the questions that we got through the link in some of my comments. A lot of what we have been doing, though, is identifying gaps in what would be perceived as a gap in safety, and looking for ways of addressing that. And so a lot of ideas have been considered, everything from having plexiglass to having shields to having masks to, I mean, we've probably even discussed the possibility of just putting ourselves in bubbles. But these are all real things. At the end of the day, I know what it is to be in front of a classroom teaching, and that half of what we do when we're trying to deter a student from cheating or from talking is in facial expressions. And if we have a mask, then, you know, there goes that mode of communication. And so we're trying to address all of these potentials for what it'll look in the fall. We are developing, and I say we as a system, not just Leeward, with some guidelines in as to what to expect from the employee side as well as the student side to maintain a level of safety and reduce the chances of COVID contamination. We're looking at contingency plans. What will happen if, for example, a student were to suggest that they were COVID positive? How does the college respond to that type of information? What do we do in the case, for instance, where a student or an employee rather, if one of us looks sick? Like, how do we react to it? What rights do we have? What rights do we have as employees and as students? All of these are things that are being considered, but I will nudge again, and as I've been doing all along, a lot of times these decisions are slower in the making because of the legal ramifications. But I have to say that I've been seeing some real good progress in those areas, and so we'll be able to share more of that so that everyone's informed. Right now, with very few exceptions, we've been asking for people to come back to campus, and that's just based on function. But for the most part, we're using the month of June to sort of do a phased-in approach. It's very likely that July is going to be a continued phased approach. And then the fall semester is going to be a continued phased approach, because in order for us to maintain the recommended social distancing parameters, we can't all be here and also have all of the students here. It's just not a realistic approach. I had some questions that revolved around the ramifications of taking our free time and making decisions. I agree. If we are to shift some classes to hybrid or online or synchronous, asynchronous, or whatever it is we do with enrollments, the longer we wait to make the decision, the more students that are likely to be impacted. And I agree with that. And so locally, we're going to begin looking at phases of some of these changes. So in instances where we can make the decision to change classes, we will begin doing those. But it is important to also note that the University of Hawaii is looking at a June 30th as that threshold where the decisions are not only made, but they're also put in effect. And so that seems like a really long time from now. It really isn't that far from now. But we're hoping to begin phasing some in, because I know that the minute that if I were a student, I get a notification from Banner or wherever it's coming from that says, oh, by the way, you've been dropped, figure something out. It's not a great message. We got to look for a way of communicating it well and having some plans to help our students mitigate some of those changes. And so we are looking at making some more immediate decisions. All that I could say right now is that through the academic side, with the leadership of Kay, Ron and Jim, the division chairs and the coordinators, we're beginning to make some of those communications get through so that our faculty are informed and are able to make some determinations. We're soon going to be able to roll out some of these decisions. And I will just advertise again, there is a meeting that's happening next week. Coordinators with the Instructional Workgroup, just to help inform some of the changes that we're going to be able to make. At the end of the day, we still want to be able, like they suggested, to provide a schedule to the students, but we know that it's not going to look anywhere near like the schedule that we had last fall. So yeah, so more will be rolled out I would argue in as early as next week. And so we'll continue communicating. I think that this is a really good venue for communicating some of these changes. But when things become solidified as a decision that's a given, that's when we will be sending it out through email as well and putting it out on the website. One of the holes that we've identified is that we need to keep our students informed as well. And so it's important for us to begin sharing with our students some of the changes that may be coming down the pike, so that they can plan as well. And so those are the things that we're beginning to focus on. I am feeling much more comfortable this week than I did a week or two ago, because I could see the progress that the work groups are making. We are continuously adding more folks into these working groups, just because we want to make sure that every area is represented in some capacity. And we are also identifying questions that span, multiple work groups, as well as questions that it just seems that we don't have a group currently addressing. And so we'll be rolling more of that. And so I am just very, very pleased with the commitment that I've seen, because just about everyone that we've sent an invitation has been very responsive and willing to work with us. And so I'm grateful for that. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything on my. Yeah, I think I may have covered what I had received electronically.
Somebody asked about enrollment for fall, and
Yeah.
I said down 19% today.
Yeah, and so you know, enrollment is important. You know, safety is important. Enrollment is just as important. And again, in light of Mark's part of the presentation, I'm glad that he takes the heat for the budgetary stuff. But the reality is that when we have unbudgeted positions, as an example, or areas where we're not able to immediately backfill positions under this hire freeze, we got to be creative. And so lecturers come, you know, from budgets that are likely to you know, have to make some shifts. The tuition dollars give us a little bit of not and yay! But for the summer, we're up, I want to say 22% so far, with possible, with the possibility of a little bit more in light of the pilot that's called Next Steps, which is a partnership with P20 and DOE in trying to get the 2020 high school grads enrolled. And so they're taking free classes through this program to, you know, just keep them engaged and reward a class that was really challenged this semester. We've seen quite a bit of students coming on board as a result of that. More recently, maybe as recently as yesterday, I mean, time has been really weird lately, but I think as recently as yesterday, I believe that they're I'm gonna butcher it. The Hawaii Foundation, is that?
UH Foundation?
No.
Hawaii Community Foundation?
Hawaii Community Foundation, and I think a bank.
Okay.
I'm terrible at this. I'm glad that this isn't public. This is just First Hawaiian Bank came together and put up a pot of $2 million for scholarships for the students to take on the next steps. And so it really is thinking outside of the box and working, you know, creatively to address some of these needs. So for summer, we're doing really well. For fall, we were doing a little bit better. We're slipping a little bit, but we're still pretty much better than everyone else.
Yeah, but only by a half percentage.
Yeah. So we're losing our edge, and so we're going to try to continue being creative. And it's really a matter of, you know, I'll go back to our WIG, and that's really important. You know, keeping the students we have is just incredibly important. And so anything that we could put into play that will help our spring students carry through, maybe not in the summer, but come back in the fall, will be incredibly important. And so we're going to be pretty creative at the same time, you know, with all of the challenges that we have in seeing if we could make up some of the enrollment. Earlier during the COVID period, I shared that, you know, early college was a concern for me and that there may be some possibilities of it moving forward. It's still likely that we're going to get early college, and that's maybe why we're beginning to slip on that percentage for the fall. But I want to say it's not like last year. And so COVID has imposed challenges on everyone. And so we're not just going to get grandfathered in just because it happened last year. So anything that we could do would be a wonderful opportunity for us. Kathy?
Two questions.
Go for it.
One is there any discussion about class caps, in particular face-to-face? And does anyone know what percentage of our students opted for credit, no credit?
Ooh, the percentage.
Ooh, percentage.
I've seen the numbers of the credit, no credit. There were some interesting trends that I wasn't too clear about, and as to why some students that may have had good grades still opted for credit, no credit. I think that we could come up with a percentage that opted for it and share that.
Right.
As it relates to class caps, there have been ample conversations on the class caps, and I'll address it a little bit, and I don't know, maybe, you know, I don't know. But we're trying to be very creative in how we manage both social distancing and our ability to offer the classes with the resources we have. And so for some types of classes where it is incredibly hands-on, those are areas where the class caps can likely be reduced based on just the organization of the classrooms and the equipment available. In instances where we could have that hybrid situation, we're trying to maintain the class caps to where we've had them, just to ensure that we have the resources for it. Again, if we have the enrollment that we've had all along, even just a little bit less, and we haven't been able to backfill some positions, and we don't have the clear ability to recruit a lot, or hire new folks, it'll be very difficult to offer what we are offering. Okay?
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify, in regards to class caps, if you had a class cap of 20, it will remain 20. But if with social distancing, you cannot put 20 people, 25 people in their classroom or wherever the class cap is, we're not reducing the class cap. We're thinking of creative ways that you will still have the same number, still teach them the same amount of students, but in different methods. So you might have a blend of 2 CRNs, and this is part of one of those modality choices you'll have later on, is one CRN might be, you will have 12 people in your classroom, social distance, you can accommodate it, and that would be one CRN that will meet face-to-face. Whereas the other 18 or 12 or whatever, 10, could be Zoom with you at the same time, listening to the same lecture. So your class count total will still be the same, but we would make accommodations for what you can do in person. So those are the modalities that we will be discussing with division chairs, program coordinators, and also the teachers on what best suits your class. But we're not reducing class caps, because that is according to Vice President Donald Straney, because financially, if we could have only 10 in a class, we would love to do that. Everyone knows the results of small classrooms, but financially, we could not do that because 10 people, I'm sorry, would not be able to pay the salaries and get us through the financial especially during these times. So class caps will remain the same.
I did get a quick update. I love my team because I get stuff through text and whatnot. We had 540 students opt for at least one class where they had no credit. And it totaled 916 iterations. So it may have been a couple of students opted for 2 classes or maybe even 3. So 916 iterations, 540 unduplicated students opted for that option.
And while one team member did that, 2 other team members in the chat said that we're up 28.6% for summer, and for fall we're down 19, but we're 1 student ahead of Capilano. Thank you, Ron.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the one saying it. So thank you to whomever put it on the chat.
Then now we have there are a couple of now there's a lot of questions. One is, are you looking at the theater for larger classes? And if it's not lectures, that the problem is the hands-on, so that can't be done by Zoom. Zoom
Right.
doesn't solve any problem.
Yeah, we realize, and we're the instructional work group has been bringing folks in from different disciplines to help inform what we're doing. So our reaction is that we don't want to blanket statement reduce the class caps, but we realize that we do have limitations in some instances, and we're not going to be able to hide from those. And so we will be responsive on a discipline-specific basis for class caps and so on. But things like using, for instance, the theater, or even at 201. I will say this from the standpoint of management. It gets a little bit difficult because then we have these large spaces. It's not off the table, but it's a consideration, cleaning in between classes with such large populations and whatnot. It could get a little bit more difficult, but.
And I also think when you talk about the theater, the different type of seating we have in theater versus wiping down or cleaning these plastic chairs, total different ball game. We would not have enough time for it to dry and so forth. So we're not looking at the theater to use for classroom. And I wanted to also share with you, and I was going to send a message out to faculty, is that when we have these types of classes like culinary or ceramics, automotive, one of the best resources you can have are your colleagues at other campuses. So I'm going to send out a link that if you want to sign up, it will give you names of other people in different disciplines that you might want to have a informal Zoom meeting yourselves and share what you have done. Kapiolani Science Group, they have a science kit for their labs. Well, maybe that's something we might want to learn about, how expensive it is, do we make our own? And we can learn from other faculty. So you might want to take advantage of that, and I'll send that out today.
Awesome.
And now we're just talking to each other.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad that we're engaging electronically. Again, there's a lot of moving pieces here. We just want to make sure that we don't make a decision and then realize that we don't have a resource to ensure that it follows through. And so I'll share the example. You know, we would want to get the cameras and microphones, and then like early during the COVID period, you couldn't even get a headset. And so there are all of these things that we want to make sure that we address before we roll out a decision.
Just some conversations going on. If summer is up, why isn't fall? And some people are sharing. I agree with Michael Cottery. We've been promoting summer as it's online. There's no uncertainty about it at all. When you talk about fall, we say we'll tell you sometime maybe in late June.
Yeah.
So, and I also think, because if people are thinking, why would summer be up when it's more expensive, you know, but because of the uncertainty is the problem of getting new students to apply. So we really want to make sure that we connect with students from spring. There are 3,600 of them that have not graduated and are not part of early college that have not signed up for fall yet. So if you know any of them or had them in your class, email them, text them, say, please sign up.
That's an important message. One of the things that always comes through is from the students, they love hearing from their teachers.
They do.
They respect you. When you send an email, not always, but most, probably better return than my email, that they'll open up and read it. So in order for us to continue our WIG in an informal way, a great thing would be is email your students from last semester and say, hey, we made this through. We're looking forward to seeing you back in the fall. So help us to get those students to continue and keep the ones that we have, okay? That'd be terrific. Thank you.
I will share a little bit more on the difference between summer and fall. If you follow our enrollment trends for the last couple of years, our biggest incline in enrollment has been with early college. And so we have a monster there called early college. And right now, because we haven't put the, you know, it's, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the early college folks, but there's something about when the applications come in and then they get processed and then we enroll them. That's the biggest slice of the pie that we're missing.
So Michelle Igarashi had texted or chatted that they're going to register them in July and that they have 765 applicants.
Terrific.
That's good. That makes me feel very good. I guess I'll just hold my breath between now and then on the one student that had from Kapiolani.
And we're also looking forward to what DOE is going to do.
Right.
You know, we're waiting to hear their fall rollout.
Yeah. We're all anxious. I just hope that everyone can see that we're all really working aggressively toward making decisions and clear communications, and that it's just very difficult because we are part of the larger system and we want to make sure that there's some level of consistency and fairness. And at the same time, there's just a hesitation of making a decision and having to pull back. And so we are moving in the right direction, in my opinion. Every time I see something on the Chronicle for Higher Ed or any other type of higher education publication, It just seems that where other institutions are tripping up is places where we've hesitated and made a fast decision. And so I share it with my team, and I don't do it intentionally, but every now and then I'll say, man, my New York case is catching up to me because it just takes a little bit longer for us to get through some things, but it does allow us to think it and cook it a little bit better. And so just know that we are working to that. There will be more opportunities for us to engage as well as continue rolling out ideas. And when decisions are being made, we'll continue communicating those through the various channels that we have. But any support that you could put for us in terms of pushing the enrollment of your spring students, or even summer if you're currently engaged, to ensure that they get in register for the fall, would be incredibly valuable. Because again, that the tuition monies does help balance a little bit the budget, especially in these times. Anything else, Kathleen?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that I was going to say enrollment, that the participation in these meetings has continued to be very strong. It's especially important just to continue the open communications. I appreciate the questions and the comments. There are instances where I may forget, and I'll check through, and sometimes I'll blast a response back to you guys at different times. But thank you for your commitment and your engagement. Everyone has been doing an amazing job, by the way. So I'm really proud of what it has been doing. And something nice to share is that we have been evaluating the student surveys on what this spring transition did to them. And many of them had really great things to say. There were some nuggets of information for our improvement, and I think that that's always valuable. But I think that the response rates that we got and the types of responses that we got more or less tell us that not only do they understand that this was a once in a lifetime type of experience, but that there's also a lot of understanding, and that we all have ordeals to get through to just make sure that we push through the spring semester. And so thank you all. I'll be sending probably other updates and maybe other invites to more Zoom meetings over the summer. This is an unusual summer, and so we'll keep engaged. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.